and an end to the dangerous escalation in Yemen following the US and British strikes against several sites in the country. And those were the major developments. Now, the full news edition. Good afternoon. Scores of people have been killed in the continuing Israeli bombardments in the Gaza Strip as the Israeli onslaught on the Palestinian territory entered its 100th day. Miriam Barshi has more.
Tense bombardments targeted the refugee camps of El Maghazi and El Bureij in the central part of Gaza, as well as the southern town of Khan Yunis and Rafah on the border with Egypt, where hundreds of thousands of people have sought refuge. Palestinian sources affirm that the infrastructure in Rafah and in other localities can no longer shelter the refugees, and accused Israel of deliberately targeting the hospitals in violation of the international humanitarian law. According to the UN, 1.9 million people, representing about 85% of the population, have been forced to flee their homes since the Israeli army launched its all-out operations on Gaza early October. The Israeli operations have claimed around 24,000 lives and caused over 60,000 wounded. This came as 25 Palestinians were arrested during operations carried out by the Israeli occupying forces in the West Bank, including Bethlehem, Jenin, Nablus and Ramallah. In the meantime, the Israeli army pursued its pounding of several villages and municipalities in the southern part of Lebanon. The attacks launched by the Israeli army on Gaza continued to be denounced worldwide, notably in Washington and London, where thousands of people took the streets to press for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. In this connection, China and Egypt spoke out in favor of a ceasefire in Gaza and the creation of a Palestinian state with a UN fully fledged membership. During a joint press conference held today in Cairo, the foreign ministers of the two countries called for an end to be put to the fighting and violence in Gaza and urged for the holding of an international summit meeting on peace in order to find a fair and sustainable solution to the Palestinian issue.
The UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has said that the ongoing war on Gaza is sustaining the world's shared humanity. The UNRWA General Commissioner Philippi Lazzarini said the massive death, destruction, displacement, hunger, loss and grief of the last 100 days are staining our shared humanity. The UNRWA officials said in the past 100 days, sustained bombardments across the Gaza Strip caused the mass displacement of a population that is in a state of flux, constantly uprooted and forced to leave overnight only to move to places which are just as unsafe. He stressed that this has been the largest displacement of Palestinian people since 1948. The UNRWA said that this war affected more than 2 million people and many will carry lifelong scars, both physical and psychological, with the vast majority being children.
In a statement released by his office, the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grundberg, reiterated the calls made by the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, for all parties involved to avoid actions that would worsen the situation in Yemen, escalate the threat on maritime trade routes in the Red Sea, or further...
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, 14 hours, 34 minutes Algiers time, and the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grundberg, has called for a maximum restraint and an end to the dangerous escalation in Yemen following the US and British strikes against several sites in the country. Miriam Barshi.
In a statement released by his office, the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grundberg, reiterated the calls made by the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, for all parties involved to avoid actions that would worsen the situation in Yemen, escalate the threat on maritime trade routes in the Red Sea, or further fuel regional tensions at this critical time. The statement shed light on the current critical need to protect the Yemeni civilians and to maintain the momentum of the peace process that has been slowly progressing over the past year. Grundberg noted that the increasingly precarious regional context and its potential to derail ongoing efforts towards a diplomatic solution to the years-long conflict that has ravaged Yemen. Grundberg urged all the parties involved to show maximum restraint and to prioritize diplomatic options over military ones. Recalling that the country is still facing a dire humanitarian crisis, the UN official called for an immediate de-escalation by all sides, saying it is vital to ease the suffering of millions of Yemenis who continue to bear the brunt of the conflict. He highlighted the importance of protecting Yemeni civilians and preserving the progress made in terms of peace efforts since the 2022 truce. Let's recall that the United States and Britain have launched a series of strikes on targets in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a and other provinces. The strikes came in response to the Houthis' recent attacks in the Red Sea on ships in a bid to pressure the Israeli occupation to end its ongoing assault in the Gaza Strip.
14 hours 36 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The Spanish police has dismantled a major criminal organization specialized in illegal migration from Morocco and drug trafficking. Local media said 2,300 kilograms of cannabis were seized and 160 migrants were intercepted during the intervention carried out in various parts of the country, including Malaga and Melilla. According to the news agency Europa Press, the operation was the result of a 9-month-long investigation which led to the arrest of 30 criminals, including the presumed head of the organization. The Sudanese government has condemned the UN for the dialogue it held with the head of the Rapid Support Paramilitary Forces, RSF, and rejected the invitation to attend the summit meeting of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development due to take place in 4 days. In a communique, Sudan's Transitional Sovereignty Council, led by General Burhan, said the events in Sudan were a domestic issue. Meanwhile, at least 36 civilians were killed in bombardments carried out by the government forces against a district in the southeastern part of Khartoum. According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, the conflict raging in Sudan has killed over 12,000 people and displaced over 7 million others. And still in Africa, people in Comoros are heading to the polls today, Sunday, as part of the first round of presidential elections, with outgoing President Azali Assoumani running for 4th mandate. Nearly 340,000 people are eligible to vote in the country, of fewer than 1 million people. Assoumani, who held the rotating chairperson role of the African Union for the past year, is facing 5 competitors. The earlier vote followed constitutional reforms that removed a requirement that the presidency rotate among the country's 3 main islands every 5 years, and thus allowed Assoumani to seek re-election. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International and to Latin America now. In Ecuador, more than 40 hostages taken by detainees in Ecuadorian prisons have been freed as the country grapples with a brutal campaign of gang terror. The 24 guards and 17 administrative employees were released, while 133 guards and 3 employees continue to be held hostage. The guards and prison workers were taken hostage after President Daniel Noboa announced last Monday military takedown of criminal groups, sparking a deadly confrontation with narco gangs in the South American nation. The last 24 hours have been marked by more violence in Ecuador's prisons, with 1 guard killed and another wounded. 14 hours 39 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The U.S. Special Envoy for Climate John Kerry says he will resign his role in order to contribute to President Biden's re-election campaign. Since 2021, former Secretary of State and Senator has been holding talks with several countries to secure commitments regarding climate change, notably during the last COP28 held in Dubai. Former U.S. Secretary of State led the U.S. delegations to 3 UN summit meetings on climate and worked efficiently with China despite the complex relations existing between the 2 countries, which are both generating about 40% of the world's gas emission. And the Queen Margaret II of Denmark is expected to pass the throne to her eldest son, Crown Prince Frederik. The Queen announced on New Year's Eve her decision to abdicate after 52 years of reign, becoming the first Danish monarch to abdicate in 900 years. And to the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations now. Algeria will play Angola tomorrow Monday in Bouaké, Côte d'Ivoire, as part of our first football match of the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations. Despite pre-tournament predictions favoring Algeria, Monday's game could go either way. After playing Angola, Algeria will play Burkina Faso and Mauritania. Côte d'Ivoire won yesterday over Guinea-Bissau in the opening game that was played in Alassane Ouattara Stadium in Abidjan. And Radio Algeria International held today a forum under the motto the 7th Summit of the Gas-Producing Countries in Algeria, a reflection of Algeria's central role in the world's energy scene. Participants tackled the current gas situation and the progress made last year in terms of gas exports. 14 hours 41 minutes. Algeria's time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and time now for the headlines. Scores of people have been killed in the continuing Israeli bombardments in the Gaza Strip as the Israeli onslaught on the Palestinian territory entered its 100th day. And the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has said that the ongoing war on Gaza is staining the world's shared humanity. And the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grundberg, has called for a maximum restraint and an end to the dangerous escalation in Yemen following the US and British strikes against several sites in the country. 14 hours 42 minutes. Algeria's time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and I invite you now to listen to our economic program compiled and presented by Said Bouazi.
Hi and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, at its meeting chaired by Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi, the government has heard a report on the 2023-2024 ploughing and sowing season, which is proceeding smoothly thanks to the aid and support measures for farmers decided by the President of the Republic at the Council of Ministers meeting on 1st October 2023. Last November, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development chaired a meeting at which the latest measures taken to ensure the success of this season's ploughing and sowing campaign were discussed, notably as regards the mobilization of agricultural inputs, fertilizers and seeds, as well as the assessment of ongoing preparations in the field, with inspection committees being sent out to all cereal producing provinces. The Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arkab, has received the CEO of the Italian company Eni, Claudio Descalzi, with whom he discussed the prospects for strengthening cooperation and partnership relations between Sonatrach and Eni. Held at the ministry's headquarters in the presence of the CEO of Sonatrach, ministry officials and the Italian company Eni, the meeting enabled the two parties to review the cooperation and partnership relations between Sonatrach and Eni, describing them as excellent, as well as the prospects for strengthening them within the framework of the agreements signed between the two companies. The General Directorate of Taxes, DGI, has announced the main tax provisions of the 2024 Finance Law, which are aimed at notably preserving the citizens' purchasing power, improving the business climate, and granting tax concessions to support investment and active businesses. In a press release published on its official website, the DGI listed the new measures as meeting a socio-economic objective and focusing on 7 main areas, namely supporting investment and the national economy, preserving the citizens' purchasing power, mobilizing tax resources, tax compliance, and the fight against fraud, facilitating and simplifying procedures, digitization, and other measures introduced in this text. The managing director of the Green Energy Cluster Algeria, JICA, Boukhalifa Yaisi, has called Energies for the reinforcement of the energy mix in Algeria in order to increase its gas export capacity. Speaking on Channel 3 of the Algerian radio, Boukhalifa Yaisi said that the gas economy was a strategic issue given the interest in this resource on the part of countries such as those of the European Union, which has led Algeria to fight to stay in the race to master regional markets. More in our program. The Minister of Fisheries and Fish Production, Ahmed Baddani, has presented the sector's situation and strategy for 2030 to the Agricultural, Fisheries and Environmental Protection Committee of the National People's Assembly, APN. During the hearing session, the minister pointed out that the development of marine and continental aquaculture and the promotion of deep-sea fishing to access new fishing grounds and thus increase production are the main thrusts of the sector's strategy for fisheries and fish production up to 2030. The Minister of Public Works and Basic Infrastructure, Lakhdar Rekhrouch, has paid a working visit to the Maritime Studies Laboratory, LEM, of the GAICA Infrastructure Group for Infrastructure Studies, Control and Assistance, where he chaired a coordination meeting devoted to presenting the laboratory's activities and the technical issues raised by port infrastructure. During the meeting, the minister heard the presentation on the activities of the LEM, which is considered to be a leader in the design of facilities and carrying out tests on mock-ups to ensure the durability of facilities in the marine environment. He also listened to a presentation on typical studies for port projects and the design of coastal road development projects. The Director General of Foresight at the Ministry of Energy and Mines, Mjelled Miloud, has said that Algeria is firmly committed to reducing the impact of the oil and gas industry on the climate and the environment by implementing concrete initiatives and joining global partnerships to combat greenhouse gas emissions. In a statement to the APS, the official spoke of the ambitions and decarbonization projects that Algeria has set itself via the national company Sonatrach in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from 7% to 22% by 2030 and to reduce the overall volume of flared gas to less than 1% by the same year. The telecommunications company Algerie Telecom and mobile telephony operator Ooredoo have signed an agreement for the exchange of innovative services. The agreement, which reinforces public-private partnership, aims to develop a solid and beneficial collaborative approach with a particular interest in the expertise of both parties in order to enrich the innovative technological solutions and services on the Algerian market. And to wrap it up, a memorandum of understanding has been signed in Algiers between the High Commission for Digitization and Huawei Telecommunications Algeria, according to a press release from the Commission. The aim of the agreement is to strengthen cooperation, the exchange of expertise, training, and the development of knowledge in the field of digital transition. And with this, we come to the end of our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. Goodbye.
Welcome to this new edition of the Health Magazine, during which we will shed light on a very common health issue that affects many children around the world. Most kids have moments when they have excess energy, but how often do you have to tell your child to slow down, stop interrupting, or stay still? Hyperactivity is a classic sign of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. It can also occur with other conditions. Hyperactivity means having increased movement, impulsive actions, and a shorter attention span and being easily distracted. The signs of hyperactivity are hard to miss, and they often prompt negative reactions from other people. Until you know the reason behind the behaviors, you may find yourself getting annoyed and thinking that your child is just acting out. But if your child has ADHD, his overactivity is caused by differences in how the brain works. Here are some behaviors that are common with hyperactivity. Talks almost constantly and frequently interrupts others, moves from place to place quickly and often clumsily, keeps moving even when sitting down, bumps into things, fidgets and has to pick up everything and play with it, has trouble sitting still for meals and other quiet activities. Now, what could be the causes of hyperactivity? ADHD is a frequent cause of hyperactivity in children, but it's not the only possible cause. Other conditions can cause kids to move around and talk too much, just for different reasons. Here are some of the issues you may want to read up on and talk about with your child's doctors. Let's explain a bit more. What does ADHD mean? ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is a chronic condition marked by persistent inattention, hyperactivity, and sometimes impulsivity. ADHD affects children and teens and can continue into adulthood. ADHD is the most commonly diagnosed mental disorder for children. Children with ADHD may be hyperactive and able to control their impulses, or they may have trouble paying attention. These behaviors interfere with school and home life. It's more common in boys than in girls. It's usually discovered during the early school years when a child begins to have problems paying attention. Adults with ADHD may have trouble managing time, being organized, setting goals, and holding down a job. They may also have problems with relationships, self-esteem, and addiction. We should also emphasize that being hyperactive doesn't just mean zooming around the room. Kids may fidget or have extra movements even when doing little things like tying their shoes, writing, or playing an instrument. Kids with ADHD also tend to be impulsive and have trouble paying attention. ADHD may look different at different ages. For example, a preschooler might be accident-prone while a grade schooler may not be able to sit still long enough to finish his work. Anxiety disorder. Anxiety can make kids wrestle and unable to focus. Those symptoms sometimes lead people to mistake it for ADHD. It's not uncommon for a child to have both conditions at the same time, however. Hyperthyroidism. Kids rarely have this condition, but when they do, it can cause them to fidget and lack focus. It also often involves eye issues like an irritation or bulging. Inner ear disorders. Kids with inner ear problems are often hyperactive. These kids' need for constant motion may be caused by their hearing and balance disorders. Sensory processing issues. Kids with sensory processing issues can become hyperactive when they are overstimulated or understimulated. How to cope with hyperactivity. Getting to the bottom of your kids' hyperactivity is a process that may take a few steps. A good way to start is by observing your child and taking notes. Having these notes will be helpful when you talk to a professional about your concerns, and it may help you get answers more quickly. Here is what you can do to understand what's behind your child's hyperactivity. Talk to your child's teacher. Hyperactivity can affect learning. That's why it's a good idea to reach out to your child's teacher. Together, you can talk about classroom strategies that can help, such as using a secret signal to cue your child to stay on task. Look into an educational evaluation. If you think your child's hyperactivity is affecting his learning, you or your child's teacher can request that the school evaluate him. Depending on the results, your child may be able to get services and supports to meet his needs. That might include things like taking breaks during tests or taking tests in a separate room where there will be fewer distractions. Talk to your child's doctor. This is also a good place to start. Bring your notes with you to the visit and share your concerns. The doctor may want to rule out hyperthyroidism and other possible medical causes of your child's hyperactivity. There are some questions you're likely to be asked to get a better sense of what's going on. They may include things like how long you've been seeing the behaviors, whether they're getting worse or whether the teacher sees them. The doctor may also recommend a psychological evaluation to look at how your child thinks and to assess whether he has ADHD or anxiety or both. Talk to specialists. You may be referred to more than one specialist to get to the bottom of your child's hyperactivity. An audiologist would look for hearing problems. A neurologist, psychiatrist, or developmental behavior pediatrician would look for brain-based medical issues including ADHD, and a psychiatrist or psychologist could diagnose anxiety disorders. Professionals who can prescribe medications for these issues include your child's doctors, a psychiatrist, a neurologist, or a physician's assistant. See a private learning specialist. ADHD can have a big effect on your child's learning. A psychologist can do an evaluation to see what the impact is and if any learning issues are at play. The tests are the same as what they use in a school evaluation. Tutors can help kids develop strategies to keep ADHD from getting in the way of their learning, but tutors don't perform formal evaluations. What you can do now to help your kids. Even if you don't get an evaluation, there are many things you can do to find support. There are also strategies you can try to help your child manage his behavior. Just remember to pace yourself. Trying too many at once can make it hard to figure out which ones are working the best for your child and for you. Here are some suggestions though. Learn as much as you can. Understanding your child's hyperactivity is the first step to getting him the help he needs. The more you know, the better able you'll be to find ways to help him gain self-control skills. Observe and take notes. By observing your child's behavior, you may be able to spot patterns and triggers. Maybe his activity level raises as the night wears on. Or perhaps he has a hard time falling asleep and is overtired. Provide things to fidget with. Let your child chew gum, carry a stress ball, or have some other objects to fiddle with. It can help direct some of the overactivity and cut down on your child picking up and playing with other items. Consider martial arts or yoga classes. Physical activities give your child an outlet for his energy. These can also teach your child to be aware of his movements and be in control of his body. Try different strategies. For new ideas on dealing with behavior issues, check out the expert advice in Parenting Coach. You might find helpful tips for handling your energetic child. Connect with other parents. Knowing you're not the only family out there dealing with hyperactivity can make a big difference. Connect with parents in similar situations and share information and advice. It can be a great source of support. Finally, understanding more about what's going on with your child can help you start to get out in front of his behavior issue rather than always reacting to it. Looking at your child's strengths, finding support for yourself, and changing things a little at a time can make both of you feel more confident and in control. And with this, we'll come to the end of this edition of the Health Magazine. Do join us next week for a fresh edition of our program. Until then, have a good time and take care.